A Newsmax reporter has a Biden economic advisor fumbling through his words. Peter Doocy of Fox News spars with Karin Jean-Pierre. The View host Sunny Hostin spreads falsehoods about the Indiana mall shooting. Joe Biden wants to invoke emergency powers to push forward with his climate agenda, and his approval rating is still plummeting. All that and more here on The Bald Brad Show. Welcome to The Bald Brad Show. It is Wednesday, July 20th, and I hope your morning's starting off better than Joe Biden's because, damn, his staff, his aides, his economic advisor to his White House press secretary are all scrambling and just fumbling through their words. Man, do we have an action-packed show for all of you this morning, and I couldn't be more excited that you fellow patriots are willing to join me here at The Bald Brad Show. If you do want to support us and you're over at YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and give us a comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, leave us a nice 5-star review. Not only would you be supporting conservative, but you would be helping conservative thought and ideas get out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So your help and support would be greatly appreciated. With that being said, a lot of moving puzzle pieces today in these stories because the Biden administration continues their rampant rundown of America and just trying to drive it right into the ground. The lead story of the day comes from Blaze Media, and they say a reporter confronted Jared Bernstein, a senior economic advisor to President Joe Biden on Monday, for engaging in a double standard when addressing the gas price crisis. Remember, it's all Putin's fault. It's everybody else's fault. He went from Trump to Putin to the war to the oil companies and into the gas stations themselves. And now they want to take a victory lap because prices have dropped. We have the press briefing here from the other day that I want to go ahead and show you all. Without further ado, let's go ahead and roll the clip.
My second question, tomorrow marks the one-year anniversary of President Biden insisting that high prices and inflation, in the president's words, were expected to be temporary. A lot of my colleagues have asked similar questions, but I'm wondering how much faith can the American public put in future White House assessments about the economy, about inflation, after they saw that inflation number increase month after month and before the Russian invasion?
Well, let me say two things. First,
good question.
I tried to answer as fulsomely as I could some of that part of that question earlier. But let me ask you to focus on what we're trying to talk about today, which is something that is happening in the here and now. The chart's not up, but that first chart, which we can certainly make available.
Don't you love that the guy's talking about inflation, the reporter, and the guy sees where it's all going because everything that's happening around the Biden administration is completely negative. But they want you to focus on the here and now, folks, because they have a glimmer of hope right now because gas prices have decreased 50 cents. Whoop-de-doo, and we need to hold on to this moment. We need to grab and really hold tight because they know it's probably not going to last long. And he doesn't want to answer the reporter's questions. But anytime, something negative taking place, which has been happening for the last 18 months of this administration, they want you to look towards the future. They don't want you to look right now. They don't want to look at the present time. They want you to look at the transition phase that we're going through right now and where we're going to be in the future. See how this all works? The manipulation of this White House is just, honestly, it's completely astonishing.
To you that shows we're not talking about looking around any corner here. We're talking about what has happened in the past 34 days to prices at the pump. They've fallen 50 cents, and you heard me go through some of the numbers in terms of the relief for American drivers. At the same time, we are not stopping there, okay? This is nothing close to a victory lap because we have...
I love that. We're not stopping there. I mean, this guy sounds like a salesman, folks, but there's more, and we're not taking a victory lap. Joe Biden literally just posted a tweet showing gas prices going down, virtually taking a victory lap himself. So his economic advisor and Karin Jean-Pierre's White House press secretary saying that we're far from victory lap, while Joe Biden's out there chauffeuring around the White House, sending tweets, taking a victory lap. I mean, the contradiction here is crazy, and it just gets worse.
Much more to do to achieve the president's agenda of helping families get some breathing room in this tough environment, which is characterized by, of course, such highly elevated prices. Now, if you can help people with prescription drugs that cost 2 to 3 times less in other countries for the same pill, If you can help a 60-year-old couple with a $45,000 income not have to pay another $1,900 to get.
If you call in right now, we'll throw in this. And there's more. If you call within the next 2 minutes, you'll get free shipping. I mean, this guy just sounds like a salesman, folks. And he's selling you a bunch of crap, selling you a bunch of hubbub.
Their insurance coverage, you are accomplishing the president's goals. Now, to do that, we need Congress to align and work with us. And, Democrats, many Democrats are there when it comes to prescription drugs. This is something that President Trump said he wanted to achieve. And, he didn't get there. This president is pushing hard to achieve that goal. One last point on this. I've talked about mostly near-term relief because that's so important for families who are seeking a little bit of breathing room right now. But there's another piece of legislation on the docket, and that, of course, is CHIPS. And this is something that has had real bipartisan support. I believe an earlier version got 68 votes in the Senate. I think it is absolutely and critically important for this nation to invest in domestic production of microprocessors. Again, not only would this be a highly favorable investment for growth and for jobs, it would be disinflationary because one of the areas where we see inflationary pressures is, of course, in autos, which now very much depend on chips. To be clear, that's not a near-term intervention. That's not going to show up, in the next couple of months. But longer term, absolutely. Supply.
I agree in terms of what he's talking about with inflation pressure, supply chain pressures happening with these microchips. A lot of them are being produced by Taiwan. You have other manufacturing happening in China. And with China's intelligence that's taking place on trying to spy on Americans and other factors, I do agree we do need chips to be built here. There's a couple things I want to add with that. Is one, that's not necessarily going to make things cheaper. You think it would because now you're creating you're developing a competitive market, a global competitive market against Taiwan and China. But the problem is when we produce things in manufacturing within America, you tend to see prices skyrocket because it just costs more. You have the Democrat Party constantly wanting to increase wages. You have unionized workers always competing and trying to ultimately get more pay, more wages. So you have that cost of good going up within itself. So it's not always going to eliminate the inflation. Sometimes it does cost things to be actually more expensive than what they were before. So what the government's trying to do right now is they're trying to subsidize it by pushing through this massive spending package. It's in the billions for these microchips to ultimately be produced. You have Nancy Pelosi's husband, Nancy Pelosi herself, putting in millions of dollars. I think it was like $5 million in NVIDIA or something like that, chip manufacturing, way before this was to ever take place and be voted upon. There's a lot of conversation to be had with these Congress representatives going out there and investing in certain companies, knowing certain knowledge that other people don't. So I'm not saying it's insider trading. I'm just saying there's definitely some shady business going on. And when that subsidy ends, it makes you wonder what that chip manufacturing is going to look like, again, in the future. So I agree it's long term. I do agree we need chip manufacturing here because obviously what's taking place with the supply chains, but there's also a lot of problems that this could cause as well. We'll have to see what those problems are and how they arise in the future. And then hopefully a Republican will be in office by then that we can fix this and combat it.
Chain, same thing.
Having it both ways, Jared, because when the gas prices go up, it's got nothing to do with the president. When we see some decline, you want him to get the credit.
Damn.
Look, I think that there's no both-way thinking here at all. I think that
what a liar! There's no both-way thinking here. Are you kidding me? You literally were crapping on Trump. Then you moved to Putin. Then you moved to the oil companies. Then you moved to the gas stations. You were literally blaming everybody else for the gas prices, to the oil prices, to everything other than yourselves. And so now that you got a 50% decline in retail price and the price of oil and gas, you're going to sit there and be on your high horse and parade around and do a victory lap, meaning Joe Biden is? And it's not two-way, both-way thinking? Are you kidding me? What a bunch of crap. What a bunch of crap from this administration. And it's so blatant. These people are so bad at their jobs. At least Jen Psaki was at least pretty good with standing on her feet, thinking with her head, and giving us a bunch of hocus pocus. These people fumble through their words. They try to figure out as they're fumbling through their words how they're going to lie to you. And then they just stumble upon some sort of answer that's incoherent and completely contradictory to the facts and what's actually taking place. Unbelievable stuff. It's giving us content, but oh my God, these people get paid, some of them $180,000. Karin Jean-Pierre gets paid $180,000 to do this type of work. I mean, folks, the American dream is still thriving. You can get a job as the White House press secretary and push out this kind of bogus crap and get paid $180,000 plus benefits. Maybe a pension too. Jesus.
There has been a consistent, I think, pressure on this White House to try to do everything it could to ameliorate inflationary pressures, and the president has reacted from the beginning, talking about how this was such an important priority to alleviate these pressures on behalf of the American people. So what did he do? He put his head down and got to work and got us to work to do everything we could to achieve that goal. He then presided over the largest historical release of barrels of oil from the Strategic Reserve, 180 million barrels. Then he talked to global partners.
Wow. 180 million barrels from our reserve that's supposed to be used for like FEMA to utilize if there's like hurricanes or natural disasters. And by the way, 5 million barrels went to China. And that place that it went to China at so happens to have Hunter Biden investments at. So this guy's going to show up right. Oh, he did a little drop in the bucket. Look at what he's done. And watch when things go to shit, they're going to stand up there and be like, freaking Putin again. But folks, I'm laughing because this dude said absolutely nothing. And that entire rambling that he said, we are all now dumber for having to listen to what he just said, because he said a bunch of nothing, trying to ramble and get through a freaking answer, and never truly answering the guy's question and pointing out the fact that you're hypocritical and that you're giving two pathways here and never taking personal responsibility for your actions and the negative decline that you've had on this country and the economy.
To get them to kick in another 60 million.
It was Putin's fault. When they're coming down, he gets the credit.
Yeah, I very much disagree with that framing. I think what's happening here is a president who is working tirelessly to address the largest constraint, probably the toughest constraint facing American households right now, the budgetary impacts of these elevated prices. And we're showing you here today some real results, partially that partially derived from concrete efforts he's taken.
Oh my gosh, folks. Come on. You got to be with me on this one. That was bad. I mean, again, there's Jen Psaki, there's Karin Jean-Pierre, and then there's this guy in terms of bullshitting us to our face. Forgive my French, but this guy was freaking terrible. This guy, Bernstein, told reporters at the White House press briefing that he was not taking a victory lap, even though Joe Biden himself was taking a victory lap on Twitter. Biden spent months blaming record high gas prices on Russian Vladimir Putin, the oil industry repeatedly accusing oil and gas companies of profiteering. But now, folks, now gas prices are decreasing. Biden gets to take all the credit. So at one end, he's going to blame everybody. At the other end, woohoo, look what I've done. Give me all the credit. It's unbelievable. And thank God you have Jared there pointing out the hypocrisy and the double standard that's coming from this Biden administration, where Biden's going to praise for doing everything in his power to lower gas prices, while at the same time he's not going to take any sort of credit for the decline that's been happening with these oil companies, as well as Biden's basically war on them by wanting to implement these climate change agenda that he's been trying to push ever since he was campaigning. So after disputing the framing of Rosen's pushback, Bernstein tripled down on Biden working tirelessly to produce real results for Americans. Isn't that an amazing statement? He's working tirelessly, and we hear this from Jen Psaki at the time, and then now it's Karin Jean-Pierre. He's doing everything he possibly can. He's not doing everything he possibly can. It's a bunch of BS. He is not. Gas prices have gotten worse since he's been in office. If he was doing everything he can, he would be increasing oil domestic production, which he said he's not going to do. He would be trying to ultimately help the regulations being removed so they can actually do their job. He can get rid of the red tape. There's so many things that he could do, in which Chevron CEO has given. You've had the other oil companies give him certain implementations that they could do to help relieve this. You can increase the oil pipeline, or at least put it back in production. He doesn't want to do any of that, but he's losing sleep over this, guys. He's doing everything he possibly can. Well, the charades continue. I know. We have video clips just all day today. I mean, I couldn't be more excited for this episode because it just shows you the ridiculousness and the clown show of this administration. So we have Peter Doocy of Fox News. Once again, I know you guys love these segments I do because we highlight, as does Peter Doocy, the hypocrisy and just the craziness, once again, of this administration on not answering questions, dodging it, spinning it, doing everything they can to make themselves look good. I understand her job is hard, but God, she sucks at it. So here you have it, Karin Jean-Pierre sparring with Fox News reporter, the great, the gladiator, Peter Doocy. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thank you.
I'll come to you after.
Just following up on something the vice president said today, does the president agree with her that the recent Supreme Court decision on abortion access is similar to slavery?
I have not seen her comments. I would like to see her comments for myself
Her comment
before.
was, we know, NAACP, that our country has a history of claiming ownership over human bodies. And today, extremist so-called leaders are criminalizing doctors and punishing women from making healthcare decisions for themselves.
Well, she is correct. Today's decisions are criminalizing doctors and essentially taking the rights away from women, taking the freedom away from women.
I'm so tired of this argument coming from the progressive left. There are some Republicans that are doing it too, because it's not just strategically a Democrat progressive left agenda. Abortion enthusiasts are on the right as well. Those rights never existed. People need to fully understand that. And that's what bothers me so much about this White House and its administration. And we'll continue here in a moment, but I definitely want to highlight this aspect because I think it's important. We have a lot of new viewers, a lot of new subscribers on the show. You need to start with Griswold v. Connecticut. I've talked about this at length on the show. Those rights are not in the Constitution. The rights that she's talking about, the rights that pro-choicers are talking about. I used to be pro-choice. I've flipped. Those rights aren't there. The actual Supreme Court justices that voted upon it and enacted it, their own clerks said it doesn't exist. Okay. The Supreme Court justices of the time said it doesn't exist. What they said was, hey, there's a Bill of Rights. This Bill of Rights creates penumbras, shadows, and within those shadows, you'll be able to find other rights. Mind you, these rights that they've created, the Supreme Court did not the legislative branch, the judiciary branch. The Supreme Court found these rights and created them. They're not there. Even though these rights that were never there somehow just appeared magically at the time, eluded legislatures, framers, the founders for 176 plus years, and they just magically found all these rights. And that ultimately formed into the decision and helped form the decision and created a pathway for Roe v. Wade. So now when you have these justices actually look at the Constitution and read it and don't find it anywhere, everybody's pissed because you took my rights away. How can the Supreme Court and the judiciary create your rights in the first place? Furthermore, in Roe v. Wade, created different abortion standards at different trimesters of Roe v. Wade when it was enacted. So now they're acting as a legislature once again. So it was an overreach of the powers. They weren't allowed to do it. And now when you have people coming in that actually know the structure of government, removing it, now everybody gets pissed off that you're taking my rights away, even though they never existed in the damn first place. It's so frustrating because now they're capitalizing on people's ignorance, and I don't like that. I don't like that one bit, and they're going to continue this charade, say, oh, they're hurting women and they're impacting women, yada, yada, yada. If Congress wants it, then implement it. If they don't, then shut up. It's back to the states. If people don't like it, then they need to go to that state in which it's being there for, that they can utilize their abortions. They want to kill babies all they want. I don't agree with it. I used to at one point because of my ignorance, but then once you start doing reading and research and you're going, oh crap, that was a bad decision. Those are bad things people are willing to do. Women should not have a right to kill an innocent child, but this is what they want to push. I know there's a lot of pro-choice people that watch the show. I encourage you to, again, start with Griswold v. Connecticut. Really go through it with a fine comb and just look at how it unravels into Roe v. Wade. It will change your mind.
Really taking away people's privacy. That does matter, and that is important.
Again, now she's going to talk about the right of privacy as well. You have to start with Griswold v. Connecticut to get to the point where she's talking about right now, because they created, before it was a right to privacy in Griswold v. Connecticut, they created what was called a zone of privacy. It wasn't actually called a right to privacy of that time. And I think it was Justice Douglas that created that. And then somehow in the language, it flipped to right of privacy, but they never actually talk about how they get to zone to right. And that right of privacy was through a married couple. And that dives so much deeper than what this show is really meant to be for at this time. We would need an hour-long episode to kind of discuss the two cases on how that zone of privacy went to right to privacy and how that right to privacy could create a whole nother ball game, because that right to privacy within itself could create other penumbras and shadows where you can ultimately have an endless right to privacy going down to creating drug use in your house or utilizing drug use in your house to basically doing sex trafficking through certain sectors of property that can't be enacted upon because you have a zone of privacy, a right to privacy. This could go into a whole spider web of things. I don't want to get into it, but let's continue here with Jean-Pierre and the White House saying asinine things.
President agrees.
For me, I appreciate you reading out what she said. I need to actually see exactly what was said and in what complete context. That's what I need to do as a spokesperson for the administration. But I will say that second part of what you just said, the Vice President is actually right. I just at the top, I just laid out what women are going through in this country because of an extreme decision that SCOTUS made. Because of what they did, it is going to upend and change the lives of women across the country. And we have to be mindful about contraception. We have to be mindful about marriage equality because they have made it really clear that extreme Republicans, ultra MAGA Republicans have made it clear that that is what they're going after next. So that does
again, I've repeated this on almost every show that I can think of. It just shows that they have no idea what the conservatives and Republicans' true agenda is and what we want. And I love how she's talking about, well, now people, she didn't use this language, but this is what she's implying. Well, now people have to take personal responsibility. They actually have to think about their actions, Peter. And we didn't want that before because we just wanted people to make mistakes all the time and do things maybe they shouldn't be doing. And if they were to do it, then they have to inherit that risk. We don't want them to inherit that risk. We want to kill innocent babies, Peter, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that agenda gets passed. This is so baffling that she's going to say this type of language and act all innocent while saying it. We're talking about murder here. And we're talking about, again, the Democrat Party and the pro-choice movement not wanting to take personal responsibility for their actions. And it's constant. We see that just the segment before where you had Biden's economic advisor not wanting to take personal responsibility for the negative effects of the Biden administration in terms of oil prices. Remember, before Putin ever invaded Ukraine, there was a 45% increase in oil prices. But they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the damage they had done. And by the way, that would have continued in an upward trajectory, a linear positive slope. Even without Ukraine, even without Putin invading Ukraine, we would have still saw a rising inflation with oil and gas because of their climate agenda, because of everything they're trying to do to go against the fossil fuel industry. It's a bunch of hubbub. It's a bunch of hocus pocus, and we can't get lost in all the smoke and all the BS they're trying to throw at us. We got to stay on point here with what they're trying to do with the destruction of this country. Let's continue.
Matter.
And then following up about this comment that the Saudis say did not happen, but the president says did happen. Did you personally hear the president raise the issue of Khashoggi's murder with MBS?
I trust the president. He made those comments as you heard directly from him during the press conference, and he said at the top of the meeting he mentioned Jamal Khashoggi, and so
you did not hear him say that.
I am just saying to you that the president himself. I was not in the meeting to answer that question, but the president himself said and laid out very.
Oh, I'm sorry, folks. You're probably wondering why I'm laughing. Well, I trust that he said it, Peter. As if he has his crap together. This guy fumbles through his teleprompter. Oh my God, I'm sweating. He has to be chauffeured around the White House, chauffeured around everywhere, doesn't know what he's doing, falls up a flight of stairs, hits a golf ball backwards, gets lost, falls on his bike while standing stationary, and she's just going to believe, well, he said it. I got to believe it. This is the guy that gives speeches, that says things during the speeches, like recounts these stories that never happened. Like it's astonishing. I mean, I think we're upwards of like 5 or 6 stories that he's continually repeated for like the last 40 years that literally never happened. And well, I said it, Karin. You got to believe me. I said it. It's like, Joe, you're not all there. I'm not going to believe a damn thing you said. I mean, during the campaign, when he's going up against other Democrats during the primaries, they were literally spotlighting the fact of you just forgot what you said 2 minutes ago. And this is the stuff they're going to show for out. Well, you got to believe him, Peter. He said it. You got to believe him. Nobody heard it. Nobody was there. But Joe Biden was somehow. God.
Very clearly. And just to be clear, that press conference happened because he wanted to make sure that you all heard from him directly. That was the president's decision. He wanted to make sure that he read out what occurred in the bilateral meeting with the Saudi Arabia government.
But so ultimately, we get back from this trip. There's no new peace talks in the Middle East. There's no new commitment to increase oil production in the Gulf. So what was the point of this trip?
I said it before. I swear, I love Peter Doocy. Fox News is not paying this man enough. I know there's a lot of new viewers on the show, which is why I say I've been saying this all along. When she first laid out kind of what they were doing in the Middle East, I was like, nothing's going to happen. It's just another one of those things that presidents do all the time. Now, if this was something that was outside of the realm of just the typical agenda that every president does, I would maybe have a little bit of hope of like, hey, this is cool. You're creating a meeting outside the general. That's awesome. You're trying to push for something. He came out with basically nothing. If anything, he wants to try and push forward other negative agendas, i.e. the Iran nuclear deal. And that happened yesterday as well, where they trotted out, I forget his name, another Biden advisor saying, oh, this is a good deal. This is something we want to do. It's not a good deal. To put in perspective, we gave them $150 billion of assets during the Iran nuclear deal under the Obama administration. That was sent to Iran, right? If Iran were to make the same deal with us, that would be them giving us $8 trillion. That's how ugly this was. Furthermore, they were given a 24-day at least grace period before anybody was allowed to come in and look at their facilities and see if they're actually producing uranium. They're actually on the pathway of creating a nuclear warhead. Furthermore, those that were to go in after that 24-day period, the at least 24 days, it could be longer, were the Iranians' own people. So it wasn't like we would be going in, checking under the hood. It's like the Iranian people are checking under their own hood to see what kind of damages there are. Fat freaking nuclear warhead sitting there. I don't see nothing. Nothing's here. We're good. You know, it's just unbelievable. The crap that we're dealing with from these Democrat politicians. Like, what the hell? So Peter Doocy's right in saying, look, you didn't do anything. You just went on a trip. The president probably took some naps, fist bumped some people, and he moved on. He didn't get anything out of it, which is what we all expected.
Read out earlier, Peter, of all of the things that had occurred, some of the do-outs or some of the things that we were able to get done during this trip. Look, let's step back.
Getting things done and just doing things doesn't always come in a result of achievements. Yeah, you can go do something. Hell, you can go play a soccer game and lose it. You didn't get anything done. You didn't win. You just went and played a soccer game. Joe Biden went there, took a few naps, did a couple fist bumps, fumbled through his words, and that was it. So he did things. Yeah, that's great. You went there, you did it, you showed face. Hell, we got you at least back safely. We didn't know if you would survive the trip. That comes from his own White House aides, where literally they were saying that they didn't want him to go on the trip because it was going to be too taxing for him. It's something that every president has done. They're like, we don't know if the guy's going to make it. In the same way they're talking about this guy tripping over wires and cords, potentially breaking a hip and dying that way. I don't want Joe Biden to die. Okay, he's our president. I know some of you might be saying, well, he's not my president. Look, he's the president. Let's be honest here. Okay, he's the president. Regardless of whether you want him in office, he's the president. But, you know, for her to show for out all these things like, well, we gave you the do-outs and we told you what he did. He still didn't get anything done. He just went there and wasted more taxpayer dollars when he could have just done all this over Zoom.
For a second and talk about what the president was trying to do on this trip.
Oh, what he was trying to do.
At this region, the Middle East, it's a critical
tried but didn't
region. The president, his intent was to make sure that there was not a vacuum in the region, so that you didn't have China and Russia stepping in, trying to fill that vacuum. And so it's important for the United States to make sure that we're having those conversations, direct leader to leader conversations, and that we talk about our national security, we talk about food security, we talk about climate change. All are issues that are important to the American family. And so as it relates to the oil production, I talked about, and Jared talked about what OPEC Plus did early in June. We are confident that we will be able to measure how the success of those conversations that the president had in the next several weeks.
Why not insist on a commitment, though? He gets back with no commitment, and the price of oil per barrel shot up. Is that what the president wanted, to go there and have the
Peter.
More expensive?
But again, we have seen gas prices go down in the past 34 straight days.
Aren't they still
go down
$2 a gallon higher than when you guys took office, though?
Dude, Peter is a freaking savage. Why are they still like $2 higher than when you took office? I love it, man. I love it. The thing is, it's so different than Jim Acosta, right? Jim Acosta just said a bunch of crap that never made any sense. Whereas like Peter Doocy's using real facts here, and she just is looking at him and just rolling her eyes because she knows it's the truth, and she has to find some way to spin out of it because it's negative news. But remember, according to Biden's economic advisor, we need to focus on the now, Peter. Okay, we need to focus on the 50-cent decrease. It's really making a difference for everybody. Okay, 50 cents. Yeah, it's making a freaking massive deal. It's cool. You saved $3. Awesome. While a thing of eggs, a dozen eggs is like $8. You know, you look at a burrito or taco at Taco Bell, that's like $20. Yeah, you know, you're really making a dent in my pocketbook here.
First of all, we have to look at the impact of how we got there, right?
Oh.
You think about the war that Russia has taken on in Ukraine.
I know I keep pausing it, but you guys have to see just the hypocrisy here that I'm looking at, and so is Peter Doocy. He just got done stating there was a whole $2 plus increase of gas prices before Putin ever invaded Ukraine. And she go, well, Peter, we need to take a step back here. We need to look at this and kind of evaluate it. So let's start at Putin's time. We're not going to talk about the 45% increase that happened before Putin ever invaded Ukraine. That's still consumed within that price increase after Putin invaded Ukraine. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're just going to talk at a specific history and moment in time that caters to our narrative. I see how it works.
An unmitigated war, and a war that is brutal and that has had an effect on the price gases going up, almost $2. We have talked about that endlessly. And also, we are also in a once-in-a-generation pandemic. So there are outside factors that has led to gas prices going up, to food prices going up, to inflation going up. So that is really important. What we have seen in the last 34 days is that gas prices have gone down on average by 50 cents a gallon. That matters. That matters to teachers. That matters to firefighters. That matters to nurses. That matters to everyday people. And the president is going to continue to do the work to make sure the prices go down. I'm going to continue, Peter. Thank you.
Of course, she's going to continue with somebody else because she's freaking getting shellacked there by Peter. And I love how she highlights teachers. Folks, I'm a teacher myself. I just got done. It's 50 cents. Ain't really doing much, okay? Am I glad that there is a 50-cent decrease? Sure. I'm not really seeing it at the pump. I'm not really feeling it at the end of the day. $3 here, $4 there is not going to save me in terms of paying rent, buying more food, or anything of the sort. If anything, you just cut back your driving, which is what I've had to do regarding the Biden administration on their mishandling of this economy, their mishandling of inflation, their mishandling of oil, their mishandling of everything that's happening. But this is the stuff they trot out, folks, on a weekly basis. $180,000 there. Are you happy that $180,000 plus dollars? I don't believe that 180 actually includes the benefits she's getting. And I think she gets a pension too. I could be wrong on that. But this is stuff they're going to trot out from the Biden administration. She's one of the best, folks. Speaking one of the best. Oh, God, the clips just keep on coming. The gift just keeps on coming from these progressive left. So you had the co-hosts of The View acted and attacked through their actions here on The View. They attacked the Good Samaritan who stopped an active shooter at an Indiana mall and got basic facts about the story completely wrong while dismissing the man's heroic actions. And they called his heroic actions lucky. That's what they called it. It was just all sheer luck. We've seen this time and time again. But before we get into all of that, let's go ahead and watch this clip from The View.
They say that a good guy with a gun can control a bad guy with a gun. Well, we saw in Uvalde that that's not true.
And you saw it in Buffalo.
Yes, we saw it in Buffalo.
But we saw that it is true in Indiana.
It was true in Indiana. That was a lucky moment. And you know what? I feel like this. If you're a good guy with a gun, you should not object to background checks or licensing or, a limitation on military-style weapons that kill thousands at once or hundreds at once. So why can't they just pull that off?
But with this Good Samaritan thing, listen, I was trained when I was at the Justice Department in firearms, and I was trained in defensive firearm training. It is very hard to hit a moving target. It is hard for people that are trained to hit a moving target. It is very lucky that Good Samaritan hit that moving target in that way. And he had a gun permit, but he wasn't supposed to be in the mall with a gun. So he broke the law, even though he was a Good Samaritan.
The law of Indiana is different than the law of the mall, of Simon Malls, and I would say that takes precedence when you save a life.
Well, he saved a life, but...
Guys, I gotta go. I gotta go. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We gotta go. We'll be right back.
It is so baffling that people actually watch this show and just absorb everything these ladies are saying, going, oh, okay, this is right. Oh my God, this is good. As if they're intellectuals. They're, they're the Aristotles of our time. They're the Platos of our time. These women consistently on a weekly basis say asinine things. Joy Behar, during one incident that we recorded a while ago, where you had a black woman stabbing actively another black woman in the neck and was ultimately shot and killed by a police officer, Joy Behar was up in arms over that shooting and said it never should have occurred, that the cop should have shot his gun first in the air, or if possible, shot her in the buttocks or the kneecap or shot her gun away like it's a Hollywood film. This is the people that come out and say asinine things always, and you have these other people that watch the show that are just going, oh, okay, yeah, sounds great. Yeah, you must be right, without doing their own research, without actually looking to see what that person is talking about and seeing if it's actually true. So let's go through a few quotes here on what they said and break it apart. She said it was true in Indiana. That was a lucky moment, she said dismissively. And you know what? I feel like this, if you're a good guy with a gun, you should not object to background checks or licensing or, limitation on military style weapons that kill thousands at once. It's unbelievable. Okay. Background checks or licensing. Look, we're not all against background checks or licensing. There is a case to be made if that licensing turns into a registry. We don't exactly want the government to know who has the guns, because at one point in time, you progressive crazy leftists, not you watching, but Joy Behar and the rest of the hosts of The View, you have Sunny Hostin, you have freaking Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, those ones. They might be trying to push a certain agenda, and they are pushing a certain agenda by limiting military style weapons. What's military style? What does that mean? I mean, handguns are military style. Semi-autos are military style. Long rifles are military style. A freaking knife is a military style weapon. So they want to get rid of it all. And we don't necessarily want a registry because we don't want the government taking and knowing where our firearms are. And she says that military style weapons that kill thousands of people at once. I mean, the idiocracy, folks. It's laughable. It's such a clown show. And then she realizes what she said was dumb. So since she switched it to hundreds at once, these are the same people that want a 10-round mag. And it's like, how are you going to kill 100 people at once? I mean, I'm sure it has happened. Extremely rare. She might be talking maybe about the Vegas shooter that was just picking people off. It's like freaking when you open up a can of sardines and they're just all jam-packed in there. Maybe that's what she's talking about. I don't know if there was 100 people there that were injured. Maybe there was. I can't recall. And she goes on to say, so why can't they just pull that off? Yeah. Later on in the discussion, Hostin criticized Dickens, the man who shot that intruder, the hero, for taking action to stop the mall shooter, bringing up her own experience with firearms training. It's amazing that with her firearms training, she's such a knucklehead on all these things in terms of firearms. Quote, but this Good Samaritan thing, listen, I was trained when I was at the Justice Department of Firearms, and I was trained in offensive firearm training. It is very hard to hit a moving target. 100% correct. It is hard to hit a moving target. It is hard to hit a moving target when your adrenaline's not rushing. It is hard to hit a moving target when somebody's not shooting at you. So you just sitting there, just having fun with your buddies, trying to hit a moving target is quite difficult. That's without all those external factors. By the way, she never mentioned any of this when Joy Behar was talking about that incident where that lady was stabbing the other lady in the neck, actively about to stab her, and was shot by that cop. She never brought this up about shooting him in the buttocks or the leg or the knee, all these idiotic things. No, she never brought up the Joy because, again, they want to push an agenda. She went on to say, it is hard for people that are trained to hit a moving target. It is very lucky that the Good Samaritan hit that moving target in that way. She is correct. In a sense, it is kind of luck depending on his training. I don't have the full knowledge in terms of what this Good Samaritan had with firearms training. But what I will say, and the point I want to make is that since it's so hard to hit a moving target, why do you want to limit the amount of rounds in a mag? That is the whole purpose of you carrying rounds, is to be able to hit a target. And it's not always that easy. It's actually extremely hard, which is why you want more rounds, which is why you want more ammo to be able to protect yourself if the target is moving. But they don't want to talk about that. That's too logical for them, folks. Way too logical for them. It's amazing that they can make certain statements, but don't see where those certain statements contradict their other statements that they've been making for like years, decades. Unbelievable. She went on to falsely state that Dickens was carrying his firearm illegally. Quote, he had a gun permit, but wasn't supposed to be in the mall with a gun, she said. So he broke the law even though he was a Good Samaritan. There's a problem here, folks. Indiana became what is known as a constitutional carry state in March, when their governor signed a law eliminating the license requirement to carry a handgun. Anyone who previously could obtain a permit to carry a handgun is legally permitted to do so without a permit in Indiana. Furthermore, the Indianapolis Star reported that the Greenwood Park Mall had no gun policy, but attorney and firearms instructor Guy Relford told the paper Indiana's constitutional carry and stand your ground laws protected Dickens' actions because he acted to save the people targeted by the shooter. And how he kind of compared this, and I love this analogy, he said that the mall's policy is similar to the no shoes, no shirt, no service sign, explaining that while a business could ask a customer that violates the policy to leave, no crime is committed unless the customer refuses to do so. In a case where the customer ignores the business's demand, he would be trespassing, which is a crime in Indiana. So what she espoused, what she pushed to all her viewers, which like I said, happens all the time, is completely false. But they're going to absorb this and they're going to walk amongst all of us and hate on us all concealed carry Second Amendment advocates and push their crazy ass agendas when it's consistently wrong. And I love how there's that word limiting, right? That Joy Behar used. They want to limit the military style weapons. It's infringing. You're not allowed to infringe on it. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're just switching the words out, which the left does all the time. They'll manipulate the wording on things to push their agenda. And at that point, it's game over. Because once you manipulate the wording, you manipulate the politics of the world, and the politics then will change the legislation, and then we all get screwed. So that's where the view is at on things, pushing their hypocrisy. Speaking of just pushing things, and it's just unbelievable that this guy continues to not be able to wrap his head around the idea of what he says about oil and the oil companies and the gas stations, and then his climate agenda. We have this story here where President Joe Biden is reportedly considering declaring a national climate emergency as soon as this week to activate powers that would let him regulate fossil fuels without congressional authorization. Now, you see this from the right and you see this from the left, the Democrats, continually trying to push certain emergency powers or using, the executive branch to push certain things as well. I'm not for when Trump did it necessarily, and I'm not for when Joe Biden does it necessarily. It really does depend on what they're doing. I do think executive powers and utilizing emergency declarations is used a lot as an overreach of power. I don't like it. Again, when Republicans do it, I don't like when Democrats do it. Congress is there to be a mechanism and one of the branches to enact certain things. If you want it, then we have to go through that process. You're not always going to get what you want. Things move slowly. It was designed and built that way. And that's why we've gotten so far in this country compared to other democracies. And I've said this a lot on the show as well. For the new viewers, we are considered an extreme outlier in terms of democracies and republics that have lasted throughout human history. So that should make you kind of scared in some way, shape, or form, because the further we go along that outlier, we're going to be ultimately technically moving closer to becoming becoming a superpower that doesn't exist anymore. A democracy and republic in a nutshell doesn't exist anymore. So there's a quote here from the White House, and it says, "The president made clear that if the Senate doesn't act to tackle the climate crisis and strengthen our domestic clean energy industry, he will ultimately push forward in considering all options, and no decision has been made as of yet." Remember, all decisions are on the table with this guy. He's doing everything he possibly can. It's just the messaging is at like a second grade level with this guy and his administration. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there's no thought really behind it. You were told something, and so you just jot it down on a piece of paper. You're told to do something, like, oh, okay. So he made this promise on his campaign trail. He made the promise to his base, all these crazy leftists with this climate change stuff they want to push here and kind of ruin our economy, which is happening right now with oil prices. And he's pushing this, that he wants to create certain things with climate change and appease these climate alarmists. And at the same time, he's telling gas companies to do certain things. That tell gas companies to invest in more oil, invest in more refineries and all these things. They're going, why the hell would we do that? You're trying to make us obsolete. You're trying to get rid of us. You're trying to end our industry. Why would we go and take on a certain amount of risk when you're trying to go against us? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense so much so that I think it was Chevron's CEO that came out and he said that there's not going to be another oil refinery built in the United States ever. That's how bad things have gotten with the Democrats and their climate change agenda, their narrative that they're pushing, where oil companies don't even want to invest in certain aspects of refining, of producing, because of what Democrats are trying to do. So the emergency facing Democrats is that there is not enough votes in the U.S. Senate to pass Biden's climate alarmist agenda. Most recently, you have Senator Joe Manchin sank an expansive spending bill last week that would have spent billions of dollars on subsidizing green energy initiatives and cutting carbon emissions. And then you had Bernie Sanders being trotted out saying that he's sabotaging, that Joe Manchin is sabotaging the president's agenda. Yeah, Bernie Sanders. That's another one, right? He you know what? He should have his first spot on The View in a sense of a host, because he says asinine things and has been saying asinine things for literally 40 years. But then Bernie Sanders will come out and say that Joe Manchin has been saying a bunch of nonsense for the last year in terms of his agenda. Talked about that the other day on the show. And if you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. That episode on the show is just it's ridiculous what Bernie Sanders says and does in contradiction. Manchin said he was concerned about the inflationary pressures another massive spending bill would put on the economy at a time where high prices are the number one concern for most Americans. Wait, Joe Manchin, be specific, because there's a lot of Joes taking place here. Joe Manchin is talking about pure logic. You're saying, Joe, if Joe Biden goes and pumps more money out there, whether it's through subsidies or putting out checks, that could hurt the economy, that could ultimately have a concern with inflationary pressures? Are you kidding me? But it shows you, again, the Democrats don't understand this. You have literally Democrat Gavin Newsom of California wanting to push out and will push out more checks to help with inflation. Let that sink in. The Democrats want to give more checks. They want to give another spending bill, chauffeur out another one to help with inflation and climate change. And then they can't fathom why things go down the dumpster in terms of the economy, in terms of why things get more expensive. They can't get it. They can't wrap their head around it. I'll give you a local kind of example. In California, you have this happen in Seattle as well. But in Los Angeles and Seattle, you have these places and these Democrats, progressive leftists that vote to increase the minimum wage, whether it's for the locality or for the state. And then they can't fathom why things are more expensive. They're, oh my gosh, well, why is that burrito $20? Well, why are you paying so many $20 to scoop food on a pan? Because you voted for it, you idiots. That's why it's so expensive. But then you have Karin Jean-Pierre the other day going, oh, well, hey, we're going to boast about people having higher wages. And we're trying to lower inflation at the same time, but we should be happy they're getting paid higher wages. You knucklehead, higher wages increases inflation because it costs that to make and produce that good to be even more. That is literally the definition of inflation, but they don't get it. There's also a study that came out that showed that the vast majority of not Republicans, but Democrats had no business experience. So it should come to no shock, I suppose, to myself and others that you have a bunch of Democrats that have no business experience, don't know how economics works, don't have like a foundational level of understanding of basic concepts to expect them to be able to run the government efficiently and the economy. So I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here and expecting too much from our own politicians. But Democrats are fearful, again, that the promise of all these things is just going to fall through the dumpster, because Democrats fear that Biden will be unable to deliver on his campaign promise of cutting U.S. emissions roughly by half by the end of this decade without congressional action. Lawmakers have urged the president to take matters in his own hands, and before the midterm elections in November, where Republicans are widely expected to win back control of one or both of the houses in Congress. Quote, this is the moment, an important moment. There's probably nothing more important for our nation and our world than for the United States to drive a bold, energetic transition in its energy economy from fossil fuels to renewable energy. His name is Jeff Merkley of Oregon. Again, if you're from Oregon in terms of a politician, you have no room to talk. I mean, literally Portland, Oregon is having a massive spike in crime. They can't get their ish together. And speaking of Seattle, up there as well, including Portland, all these, and Los Angeles and San Francisco, all these places that continually just are driving their own localities just right into the dumpster. They're going to come out and say this crazy crap. I love how he puts in there, there's probably nothing more important for our nation and our world. But yet you have China building coal factories. I mean, it's not clean coal. And I know it's kind of an oxymoron in a sense of talking about clean coal, but there is clean and there's just straight coal. They're just producing all this craziness. And the analogy that I give people is say for the sake of argument, that the earth was a big dumpster. Everybody's throwing their trash in this dumpster. America comes along and goes, well, we're going to cut half of our trash that we're putting in the dumpster in half. And everyone else is like, fine, we'll just throw in more trash. So they're trying to, at the sake of hurting ourselves, help the world supposedly by doing all these things. But we're the only ones that end up getting hurt. China doesn't get hurt. India doesn't get hurt. All these other countries don't get hurt. That are just polluting the crap out of the world. But we're the ones that ultimately have to screw ourselves and shoot ourselves in the foot because of these Democrats. Merkley and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse urged the president to take executive actions, saying that such of a move would unchain Biden from waiting for Congress to pass legislation. I've talked to the White House about going on offense and being aggressive and doing all the things that is within his executive powers to do that have not so far been done, Whitehouse said, though senators did not get into specifics. We all know what he meant. Well, according to the Washington Post, climate activists have urged Biden to use executive powers to halt exports of crude oil, limit oil and gas drilling in federal waters, and direct federal agencies, including the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to spend taxpayer dollars subsidizing renewable energy sources. But hey, they're doing everything they can. Biden's doing everything he can. The Democrat Party's doing everything they can. While they're pushing this agenda, imagine where the oil companies are coming from. That they want Biden to use the executive powers to halt exports on crude oil, limit oil, and gas drilling in federal waters. I mean, help me out here, folks. Does this not sound ridiculous? It doesn't seem hard for me to sit back and go, man, you have two different agendas taking place. You want more gas while at the same time you want to get rid of gas. But the Biden administration risks making inflated gas prices worse if it cracks down oil and gas production. Gas prices have fallen nearly 50 cents per gallon over the last 30 days. Woo! Party, everybody! Woo! 50 cents. Citing Biden's decision to open the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and use diplomacy to encourage U.S. allies to produce more oil. It's amazing that they're talking about how the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, again, this is the reserve that's supposed to be used for natural disasters. Hopefully we don't have one of those anytime soon. I love how while they're pushing all this climate change stuff, right? And they're utilizing all these crazy hurricanes, earthquakes, whatever the hell it may be, twisters, tornadoes, all that stuff, and attributing it to climate change, the very thing that we're supposed to use in order for FEMA and other avenues to get gas until things get back up and running after those natural disasters, they just want to deplete and give some of it to China and other people. It's just like, it's endless. It's endless stupid decisions coming from this guy. So that's with Biden making dumb decisions along with his Democrat counterparts. And because of those actions, his approval rating is plunging. I mean, plunging isn't even the correct term. I don't know what's worse than plunging, but his ratings are lower than Trump after Trump had his January 6th debacle. His ratings are that low. So President Joe Biden approval has hit a new low of 38%. Who are those 38 that still approve him? That's what I want to know. 38% as Americans lose faith in his ability to handle soaring inflation, according to a new survey. The new CNN poll found that nearly 7 in 10 disapprove of Biden's performance, a new high. Only a quarter of those surveyed approves of how Biden handles inflation. These are those knuckleheads out there that would continue to vote for people like Gavin Newsom, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, and that squad. Those are the people that continue to get chauffeured out with all these things. I mean, these people are asinine. These are the same people that will go out and like block traffic in the Capitol and get arrested for it, and have Ilhan Omar and AOC join them. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because there was a story that was released yesterday where AOC pretended to be arrested during one of these protests for abortion and women's rights and all these things, with holding her hands behind her back and then giving a power and a fist bump to everybody and then putting her hand behind her back as if she's arrested again. We got a clip of this. Let's go ahead and show it.
She's a House member, yeah.
House leader?
Yeah. No, she's a member of the House.
So this whole theater and theatrics is not just pushed by the White House, but it's also pushed by Democrats in Congress. And then they can't fathom why people don't have faith in them, why people don't trust them. Not only did AOC go out and take falsified pictures during the border when Trump was in office, but this is the type of stuff that she chauffeurs out again by placing her hands behind her back and pretending like she's arrested. She also was pretending like she was harassed by some reporter guy the other day on Capitol Hill when he was talking about her booty and her being Latina and stuff like that. And she gave him a peace sign and all this stuff, and then she pretended like she was scared. You also have Black Lives Matter pushing the same type of theatrics, saying they're fearful and all these things, when you have Candace Owens merely knocking on her door, ringing the doorbell, politely asking if she's home. But these theatrics continue, and that's why people don't have faith in them. And not only do the theatrics continue, But because of those theatrics and the PR nightmare that they create for themselves, nobody believes they're actually going to get anything done because that's all it is. It's theater, it's acting, it's fake. It's not believable. And then you have Joe Biden on top of that, losing his cognitive abilities to speak correctly, to walk correctly, to climb up stairs, to ride a bicycle, to eat his food, that he's literally being fed pills, according to Tucker Carlson from Fox News. And there's people reporting on this that actually saw it happen. That anytime he goes in public, he's being fed pills by Jill Biden, his wife, and that she's monitoring it literally on an hour-by-hour basis. So no wonder nobody has faith with any of these Democrats and the president. No wonder. The poll was conducted on June 13th to July 13th, and it comes shortly after the Biden administration released the latest CPI report, which showed inflation soared 9.1%, the biggest hike since 1981. I wasn't even alive in 1981. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Americans are losing faith in the president, with the poll finding that nearly 8 in 10, so 80%, think things are getting worse, a level not seen since February 2009. And just 31% think that the president has had the right priorities. Plus 68% said that Biden is not even paying attention to the worst problems in the country. Immigration? Hello? We literally have over 200,000 people crossing the border every single month. Yeah, he's not paying attention to anything. You can't expect him to pay attention to anything. He's not there. He's literally not there. He's gone. We showed a clip where he just was reading a teleprompter and he couldn't say kleptocracy. So he's just off. And he looks lost. I mean, his eyes almost went chameleon style, just out in different directions. So we can't expect the guy to know what the hell's going on, to care about anything. Biden's approval rating for handling the economy stand at 30% and 25% support his efforts to hold down inflation. So a quarter of Americans expect him to hold down efforts to hold down inflation. You want to have faith in the American people, but sometimes you're like, hell, there's still people out there that just are lost, as well as Joe Biden. So, I mean, you guys have corrected me. Supposedly 81, 82 million people voted for this guy. I mean, you got 25% at least right there, right? So it's just crazy. What's more, 75% say inflation and cost of living are the most important economic problem facing their family, and jump from 43% just last summer. So things continue to get worse. And folks, the numbers just, we're looking at things from like 1973 here. We're looking at things from 1981. I mean, this is how low records are going. So Joe Biden's breaking records in a negative way, continuing to drive this country and the economy down into the drain. Nothing's going to change here until you get a Republican in office, or Republicans in November being elected. I think once we have that happen, if we take back the Senate, that's going to be a little bit harder. This House we'll take back for sure. Maybe we'll see a little bit of change here. Who knows? But the president's going to continue to be chauffeured out, along with AOC, Ilhan Omar, Karin Jean-Pierre, his economic advisors, spinning the news for all of us to have to sit here and listen to, completely hitting our head against the wall with everything. But hey, folks, it's content, and it's all the news and information you need to know about. So support us again by hitting that like and subscribe button. I appreciate you all spending this fine morning here with me on The Bald Brad Show, and I will see you tomorrow here on The Bald Brad Show.